Hello YouTubers, this is Cessna Ace back again once more with another 10 video ads video, concentrating once more on VHS tapes. All of these VHS tapes came from the local flea market. I paid $1 a piece for them. Before I get to the tapes, however, you've most probably seen this shirt in previous videos. Picked it up at Walt Disney World. It is supposed to be Mickey Mouse. The vinyl part here, his face, and then here and here, his ears. What's really cool about it is the parts that are supposed to be vinyl are actually vinyl. The rest of the shirt isn't. But it feels kind of weird, but it's also cool at the same time. First up, we have Abraham, which stars Richard Harris, the first actor to play Professor Dumbledore in the Harry Potter films, and Barbara Hershey. Now, I had fallen in love with Barbara Hershey when I saw her in Woody Allen's film Hannah and Her Sisters. She played one of Hannah's sisters. By the way, one of the films I saw in the theater. And she started having an affair with Michael Caine's character, who was married to Mia Farrow's character. And I remember seeing an interview with Michael Caine of a rather humorous incident that happened while filming one of the scenes in that film. The scene took place inside Hannah's apartment. Well, Hannah's and Michael Caine's, not Keaton. Anyway, it was shot in her actual apartment. And here he was in a scene in bed with Mia Farrow. Behind him was the camera and her current lover, Woody Allen. As he leaned forward to kiss her or something, he noticed Andre Previn, her ex-husband, who was there picking up the kids for visitation. So here he was trying to do a love scene with Mia Farrow and watching everything. From behind him was her current lover, Woody Allen, and behind her, her ex-husband, Andre Previn. If I were an actor, I wouldn't be able to do that. Classic gangster film. This is Sealed. James Cagney and Angels with Dirty Faces. I don't know how long it will remain sealed. Also in the cast, Humphrey Bogart and Sheridan and Pat O'Brien. Now this next one is sealed. Runs 2 hours. Benny Hill's video review. Now this was published by HBO Video, who had also released other titles. When Benny Hill first hit the US on home video in compilation form, they were published by a company called Thorn EMI. And they were in hard shell cases which were barely larger than standard slipcase. I could only take Benny Hill in short spurts. 2 hours of Benny Hill is Benny Hill overkill. So whenever I watch a Benny Hill video, I watch it for about 20 minutes and then stop it and then watch something else. And then I'll go back to it and watch 20 more minutes, and then I'll go and watch something else. Because I only could take so much. Anyway, I have a rather humorous story about Benny Hill. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I used to work in television. Over a 25-year period, I worked for 3 television stations, all in the same market. The first one I worked for was a network affiliate, and it was really strange. I graduated from university. Well, I had gone to a university and then transferred to a college here that taught radio and television broadcasting, because I had decided that's what I wanted to do. But after I graduated, I decided, well, I made up about 200 resumes, and I sent them out. And then I went and drove up to visit my grandmother and aunts and uncles and so forth, who lived about 1,000 miles away. And back then I did crazy things like work a full 10-hour shift, get off, get in the car, and drive non-stop 1,000 miles. Back then the speed limit was 55, so it took a long time. After they raised the speed limit to 65, the trip that took me normally about 24 hours wound up taking only 18 or something like that, just from the increase in the speed limit. I might be a little off on the math, it's been a long time. What was weird about that was I'd gotten there to my grandmother's house and I called my parents to let them know that I had arrived safely. I was still 20, 21, something like that, so I was still young, and just let them know I had gotten there safely. And she said, "You got a call from such and such television station. They want to talk to you." And I said, "But I didn't send them a resume. I'd sent out resumes, but I hadn't sent one to them." "Well, they called you." Later found out that they had called the college I had graduated from, and they said, "We have an opening. We want your best student." The head of the television department recommended me. The head of the radio department recommended me. So they were interested in talking to me, and I wound up getting the job, and I worked there for 2 years. But that was a nightmare, because at television stations, master control is either in the production department or the engineering department. At that first station I worked for, it was in the production department. So you first had to learn how to be a floor director for newscasts. Once you had that down, they added camera operator to your resume. Then, once you had that mastered, audio, running the audio board for newscasts. Once you had that mastered, they would throw into the mix Chiron, which is the character generator they used. And this particular Chiron machine was an old model, and it was only single channel, meaning you couldn't have one screen up on air and a different one that you could type onto or type into information. And we wouldn't get sports scores or weather information from their respective anchors until they were heading into the studio to do their segment on the live newscast. So the constant back and forthing, okay, I need such and such, and you type up that page. You had a list of everything, every page that you had entered in data on. And you'd call that up, and then as soon as it was off, I'd go back to the sports and start typing in scores. And I need such and such. Then I go look up and type up the page number for that, and it was just a madhouse. Then came master control. Even after you learned master control, you were expected to do all the other positions within the production department as needed. And it was quite typical to run master control, throw control to master control for the 6 o'clock news, run into A control, which was where everything was directed from for the newscast, and sit down at either the audio board or the Chiron. Well, to get to Benny Hill. Benny Hill was run at the second station I worked for, which I worked there for 5 years. When I first started working there, they were an independent, but they later became a Fox affiliate. And it's the only commercial station here in town that has never changed network affiliations. all of the other channels have, and it's been a constant shuffling around. ABC, NBC, CBS, CW, UPN, the WB. We had them all, and independents. But, as I mentioned, that station later became a Fox affiliate. It still is a Fox affiliate. Anyway, one day I was working Master Control. Now, normally Master Control was handled by two people. One person who stayed at Master Control and ran all the shows and was responsible for maintaining the program log and to write down everything that aired, the time it aired to the second, and you had to maintain the transmitter log where you would put down the transmitter readings, and stations that had their transmitter at another location would get microwave feeds from the transmitter site, and all they had to do was look at the screen and see the transmitter readings. I know because the third station I worked for was set up that way. But this station had its transmitters in the shop area of engineering. So you had to physically get up, walk out of Master Control, which was technically against the rules to leave Master Control if you were working Master Control. Go into where the transmitter was, write down the readings as fast as you could, and then get yourself back into Master Control. Well, I was the only one working there that had a shift all to himself. The chief engineer had made me responsible for both Master Control and the tape room when I was on duty. Now, I asked him about that and why he did that, and he said, well, you're the only one I know that can do it. Might sound like I'm blowing my own horn, but that's not the intention. Anyway, one day I was running Benny Hill. Now, we got shows in on one of three formats, or in one of three formats. Most TV shows and almost all movies came in on 16mm film. However, we also ran shows and movies on 1-inch Type C and on 2-inch quadruplex. Now, VHS and Betamax for that matter, the tape width is 1/2 inch. With 1-inch, obviously the width is 1 inch. With 2-inch quadruplex, it's 2 inches. And those reels were big and they were heavy. Anyway, we ran Benny Hill, and one day I was running Benny Hill. Now, we had two quad machines, a newer one which was made by RCA and an ancient one made by Ampex. The RCA was a cinch to use. The Ampex was a nightmare, and these two machines, this plays a pivotal role in this, these two machines were threaded differently. The RCA, you had the take-up reel here, and you had the feed reel here, and it was angled, so there was no way those reels were going anywhere as far as coming off the hubs. And you threaded them just like you did an audio reel-to-reel tape recorder. The other machine, the Ampex, we referred to it as an upright. The feed reel was on top. The take-up reel was on the bottom. And it's been several years, so I don't recall which was which, but one of the hubs had a broken lock. So you had to keep your eye on that machine. And I, whenever possible, didn't use it. But this particular day, I had Benny Hill on the upright. And then I started seeing a little bit of banding on air, which was not all that common with 2-inch. But then it got a little worse. And then it started getting a little worse. Then I got concerned. And as I turned my head to look at the quad machine, I saw the feed reel come off the hub and come crashing down on the floor. Now, it didn't land like that, flat. It landed on its edge, and it had some momentum to it. So it started rolling, and it was rolling right towards master control, leaving a wake of tape behind it. Well, I threw on black, or punched up black. I ran and put in a technical difficulties slide in one of the telecines. Ran back to master control, hot punched to the technical difficulties slide, and then paged for a maintenance engineer to come to master control. Meanwhile, I was putting the tape back on the reels, and I was going to load it on the RCA. That's when the assistant chief engineer came in. He had decided to do the same thing. He was going to put it on the RCA. But as I mentioned, the RCA and the Ampex threaded differently. So when he first threaded it, he threaded it backwards. And obviously it didn't work. And it was all a jumble, and it took forever for him to get his act together. By that time, the chief engineer was in there, and there was no way I was going to be able to leave master control. The chief engineer was there, the assistant chief engineer was there, and they were fighting this quad machine, trying to get Benny Hill hot loaded onto it. Hot loading simply means that normally with a 2-inch machine, you would load the tape, you would carefully set all of the internal controls, because there was a door and there was a whole bunch of dip switches and so forth that you had to mess with to optimize playback. But when you hot load, you just throw that sucker on and you fast forward it into the show, you hit play, and then the master control operator hot punches to that machine. That's hot loading. They finally got it hot loaded and I went to it, but it was a nightmare. So whenever I see a Benny Hill video, I think of that story. The third station I worked for, I worked there for 15 years. Okay, anime time. Bubblegum Crisis, Tokyo 2040. Each of these has 2 episodes per volume. They're English dubbed. This is volume 6. Volume 7. And volume 8. Okay, next up we have a film starring Kiefer Sutherland, Daryl Hannah, and Molly Ringwald. Cowboy Up. Now, I love this next movie. And recently, Turner Classic Movies ran it, and I watched it then. And then just a day or two later, I was at the flea market, and I saw it, and I picked it up, and I have since watched it twice. Now, I recently had ordered some VCDs from Yes Asia. These were Hong Kong releases. And I've got one package already. I'm waiting for the other package, so I will have 10 VCDs to show. But I was rather surprised when I found this movie on VCD. Now, one of the VCDs I have that I just recently got was a British-American co-production that was licensed to a Hong Kong firm, and they released it. It's not the first time that has happened. I've also got a film, The Big Bus, which was licensed to a legitimate publisher by Paramount to be released in Hong Kong on VCD. And I have that VCD, if I didn't already say so. Anyway, this film, which they had at Yes Asia on VCD and DVD. Didn't notice if there was a Blu-ray version. The Glenn Miller Story, starring James Stewart and June Allyson. Of course, he was a big band leader back in the 30s and 40s. And tragically, he was overseas during World War II, entertaining the troops in England. And there's a really cool sequence there where, as many of you who study history know, England was forever being bombed by the Germans using V-1 and then later V-2 rockets. And here they are giving their concert, and these V-1s keep flying overhead. And the soldiers kind of look up nervously, but Stewart and the band keep playing. Then you see the V-1 run out of fuel, and it comes down. The Germans weren't really particular what target they hit, as long as they hit a target somewhere in England. So they hit a lot of civilian targets. Well, all the soldiers ducked, landed on their bellies, or flat on their bellies. Meanwhile, the Glenn Miller Band was still playing, and he was still conducting. And after the explosion and the sound of that subsided, they noticed that he was still playing and still leading the orchestra. And of course they cheered. But that wasn't the tragic part. He was flying to London, I believe it was, from somewhere else in Europe. And he was going ahead of the band. And he was riding with a general. The fog was real thick that night. His plane never showed up. Years later, it was discovered that his plane had been shot down by the RAF, Royal Air Force, because the pilot of the plane that he was in was flying at the wrong altitude for Allied aircraft on an incoming approach. And obviously with the fog that thick, the RAF pilot couldn't see any markings on the plane. So he shot it down. But the ending of this film gets me every time. Also in the cast is Henry Morgan, who played Colonel Sherman Potter on the TV series MASH. He plays a good friend of James Stewart's character, Glenn Miller. June Allyson and James Stewart were in a lot of films together, and apparently James Stewart liked working with Henry Morgan because they appeared together again, along with June Allyson, in Strategic Air Command. Sorry, I'm yabba-dabba-babbling. A sealed copy of The Hit. This is from one of Roger Corman's labels, New Concord. I've noticed I've got a lot of New Concord and New Horizons tapes. And when I went to DVD Aficionado and started entering in my collections, I've noticed that all of the New Concord and New Horizons tapes that I have were released on DVD but are out of print. So I'm wondering if those companies folded. I don't really know, but anyway. Here is a staple from PBS. He did a lot of specials on PBS. Victor Borge, Then and Now. Using comedy in conjunction with the piano. This version contains an extra 35 minutes of content. Nowhere does it say video label. You have to look at this small print to find copyright 1995, the Reader's Digest Association. Even the label is rather plain. Now, I've had people recently telling me that they like the longer videos because they like the fact that I can interject some stories here and there. Let me know down in the comments whether you would like for me to keep doing longer videos or if you want me to go back to doing the much shorter videos. Pretty much everybody who is on YouTube knows that the longer the video is, the less likely it is to be viewed, or the fewer people who will view it. Somebody see it, what, 30-minute video? I'm not going to watch that. Oh, a 2-minute video, that's more like it. So let me know what you feel down there. Okay, that's it. Until next time, stay awesome. His face, and then here and here, his ears. What's really cool about it is the parts that are supposed to be vinyl are actually vinyl. Rest of the shirt isn't, but it feels kind of weird, and but it's also cool at the same time. First up, we have Abraham. It stars Richard Harris, the first actor to play Professor Dumbledore in the Harry Potter films, and Barbara Hershey. Now, I had fallen in love with Barbara Hershey when I saw her in Woody Allen's film Hannah and Her Sisters. She played one of Hannah's sisters. By the way, one of the films I saw in the theater. And she started having an affair with Michael Caine's character, who was married to Mia Farrow's character. And behind him was the camera and her current lover, Woody Allen. As he leaned forward to kiss her or something, he noticed Andre Previn, her ex-husband, who was there picking up the kids for visitation. So here he was trying to do a love scene with Mia Farrow and watching everything. From behind him was her current lover, Woody Allen, and behind her... Hello YouTubers, this is Cessna Ace, back again once more with another 10 video ads video, concentrating once more on VHS tapes. All of these VHS tapes came from the local flea market. I paid $1 a piece for them. Before I get to the tapes, however, you've most probably seen this shirt in previous videos. Picked it up at Walt Disney World. It is supposed to be Mickey Mouse. The vinyl part here, I remember seeing an interview with Michael Caine of a rather humorous incident that happened while filming one of the scenes in that film. The scene took place inside Hannah's apartment. Well, Hannah's and Michael Caine's, not Keaton. Anyway, it was shot in her actual apartment. And here he was in a scene in bed with Mia Farrow.